What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Appreciate you guys tuning in for another video. If you guys are new to the channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. We're really trying to grow the channel. Pumping out 3 videos a week right now, and we got a bunch of great content already on the channel. So if you guys are new, go back, check out all the old videos. But really appreciate you guys tuning in to this video. And man, it's hard to believe that it's June already. The year is just flying by, but today we're going to talk about some of the best baits for June bass fishing. You know, the weather's starting to get really warm, maybe even hot, depending on where you are in the country. And typically the bass are biting pretty good in the month of June. So I've come up with a few baits. This is going to be for that deeper fishing. You know, June to me is a month that the fish start moving offshore. You know, it's really hot. Those nights are warm, so they're wanting to get out a little bit deeper. And deep is kind of relative, you know, it kind of depends on the fishery, but we're going to be talking probably between that 10 and 20 foot range is where I'm going to fish these few baits. But these few baits are a must-have for the month of June. So if you guys are ready, let's jump in and show you off a few baits. Okay, first up. The month of June is a deep crankbait. I mean, you got tons of choices for a deep crankbait, and really, I use a bunch of different brands and models. You know, all of them have a little bit different action, sound, vibration, and different presentation, and a different situation that I use each one of these. So, you know, first up, this will be the shallowest diving of them, is the Bill Lewis MR12. So like the 12 in the name, this gets down to that 12 to 14 foot range, kind of depending on your line size, your casting distance. And you know, this is gonna be for that, like I said, a little bit shallower than these other style baits we got here. But this is perfect for those, you know, kind of longer tapering points, you know, humps, stuff out offshore that, you know, don't have a whole lot of cover. You know, you're not going to be throwing a deep diving crankbait in, you know, heavy cover brush or grass or something like that. This is going to be more for that rock or shell, something like that. So MR12 for that, you know, 10 to 14 foot range. Next up, you know, everybody knows about a 6XD. This gets down a little bit deeper. I would say to the 15 to 18 foot range is somewhere around where this bait will get. And if you're noticing a trend here, they're all very bright chartreuse and blue colors. And that's one of my favorite colors for that deeper water. You know, you're really moving these crankbaits at a very fast pace so they don't get a real good look at that color. And that chartreuse just kind of flashes by them and it triggers a lot of bites. So typically I'm starting with a, you know, a chartreuse and blue or like a citrus shad type color. Those are the colors that I'm starting with, unless I'm in super, super clear water. But generally speaking, the month of June, unless you're way up north in some of the Finger Lakes and Great Lakes, stuff like that, generally once that water gets so warm, you know, you get some algae that kind of grows in it and it gets a little bit of that greenish tint to it. So, you know, the citrus shad colors are a great way to go. But first choice for the month of June is definitely going to be a deep diving crankbait. You know, there's so many options out there, like I said, so really just pick up a bait that fits that depth range that you're fishing. If you're in that, you know, 10 to 12 foot range, the MR12 is definitely an excellent choice. But like I said, depending on your depth range, your type of cover, the lake you're fishing, you got to have a deep diving crankbait in the month of June. All right, let's slide them out of the way. Next up, in the month of June, you gotta have a spoon. And this is really just kind of an alternative, a backup to the crankbait. You're gonna be fishing this in the same type of places, those deeper, rocky humps, points, shell bars, river ledges, stuff like that. And I really like taking these big spoons. You know, a spoon is something that you wanna throw when the sun's up because it's gonna flash. So generally speaking, if I had the perfect rotation of baits that I would fish on the same spot throughout the day, I'd start the day with the deep diving crankbait. Once that sun gets up, that mid-morning time, I'm gonna pick up the big spoon. And then after the big spoon, we're gonna pick up my next bait that we're gonna talk about here soon. But the big spoon, it's an excellent way to catch big fish, and it's really an excellent way to trigger those fish that are kind of neutral. You know, they're not really feeding, they're not really chasing anything, but whenever that spoon just kind of flashes down in front of them and you pop it up in front of them, it's just kind of a triggering mechanism that they just can't resist it and they go eat it. So, you know, there's tons of great options. I really like, you know, 2 different sizes. I typically throw a size like this one here, which is kind of the mini mag, which is a pretty big spoon. You know, you can see that's a pretty big hunk of metal right there. And then I typically like this size here, which is more like a 5-inch, but it's a substantially smaller size. So you'd be surprised at the size of bass you could catch on these, big and small. I mean, you could still catch a 1.5 pound, 2 pound fish on this one or this one, as well as all the way up to 6, 7, 8, 9 pounders on these things. So, you know, spoons are gonna catch some big fish. And as far as retrieve with a spoon, you know, I like to make a long cast as possible. Now, casting the spoon can be a little tricky because sometimes it likes to catch the wind and flutter in the air just as like it does in the water. So it's hard to cast accurately. You know, it'll fly one side or the other, or just kind of catch air and go straight up and not far. But I like to cast it as far as possible. Generally speaking, I throw this on 20-pound fluorocarbon. I like heavier line for this just because there's no reason not to. And then once you make that initial cast, you know, you're gonna let this flutter all the way down to the bottom and let it sit on the bottom, get all your line tight ready, and then you're gonna give it hops like that. And you're gonna flutter it up and then let it fall back down to the bottom. And generally speaking, those bites are gonna be when it's fluttering back down to the bottom after you've hopped it. So that is the main way that I retrieve a spoon, really the only way that I'll retrieve a spoon right there. But like I said, it's a must-have for the month of June. You're gonna catch the biggest fish in the lake on this guy right here. Now, landing them, that may be a different question. A lot of the times they got this big, heavy piece of metal hanging out of their face. They're gonna like to jump off. So my best recommendation for that is once you hook a fish, you just give them the business and crank in as hard as you can. Don't stop, don't try and fight them. Just crank them as hard as you can and get them in the boat as quick as possible without giving them time to throw that. But man, you gotta be throwing a spoon in the month of June. And then next up, let's go to the next bait in the progression, and that's just gonna be a Magnum shaky head. So you guys see me talk about a shaky head earlier in the year, but now we've moved on to the Magnum shaky head. So this right here is the Yamamoto Oki worm. It's a 10-inch floating worm. Get yourself some big shaky head, big Magnum shaky heads. You know, there's a bunch of different brands. I use a few different ones. Generally speaking, I don't like a screw lock style shaky head, but since this is a Magnum version, see, I can't even get it started on there. There's a lot more distance and gap here, and that's the main reason I don't like a screw lock. But since this is a Magnum style hook, there is a bunch of gap there. So you're able to rig up this worm and still get a good hookup on those fish. But basically you just rig up your worm on there, and then you're going to just Texas pose him just like that. And now you're going to cast him out. He's going to stand up on the bottom, and this big tail is going to kind of be floating back there and jiggling along on the bottom. So this is an excellent way. This is like the cleanup bait right here. After you fish the crankbait and the spoon, bring out the big old Magnum shaky head with the Yamamoto Oki worm and catch you a few fish after they've kind of slowed down. They won't bite the crankbait. You've kind of busted them up with the spoon. You can always drag a big Magnum shaky head through there and catch some more bass. So hopefully you guys learned something from this video. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Check the links in the description down below over to fishusa.com. You can pick up all the tackle you need to get out for the month of June. So till then, we'll see you guys next time.